I thought I was going to be just drawing blood, not procuring tissue from aborted fetuses. They partner with Planned Parenthood and they get part of the money.
So I was talking to Mary about what I'm trying to offer to clinics as a procurement service, and she said, you know all about this.
You know, you can imagine where they would run with this, like they're selling body part, you know.
So I say, okay, what are you looking to supply today?
We were asked to procure certain tissues like brain, liver, thymus, pancreas, heart, lungs, skin, pretty much anything on the fetus.
A lot of people want intact parts these days because they're looking for specific nodes, AB nodes, SA. I was like, wow, I didn't even know. Good for them.
I remember leaving that day, like, what have I got myself into?
Yesterday was the first time she said people wanted lungs, and then she felt like I said, always as many intact livers as possible.
So I don't want to sound like a salesman here, but I'm going to. So we return a portion of our fees to the clinic.
Yeah, and so if we alter our process and we are able to obtain intact fetal cadavers, it's all just a matter of line items.
Oh yeah, I mean if you had intact cases, which we've done a lot, so we've sometimes shipped those back to our lab in its entirety. Tell the lab it's coming. So don't open the box. Oh God.
And are we agreed that $100 would keep you happy?
I want a Lamborghini. I said I want a Lamborghini.
Don't we all, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, welcome all our March for Life viewers to our newest March for Life lecture. We're welcoming David Daleiden today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here with you. Thank you.
So, as you all saw in the video, David Daleiden is a citizen journalist who has nearly a decade of experience in conducting investigative research on the abortion industry. In 2013, he founded the Center for Medical Progress to pursue investigative projects related to bioethical issues. In 2015, he released his well-known Human Capital Project, which was a 30-month investigative documentation of Planned Parenthood's illegal sale of body parts from aborted fetuses. On the 5-year anniversary of these videos' release, we are welcoming David onto our lecture. So no, it's really wonderful to have you, David, and even though over in California, you might be locked down. It does give us the opportunity to talk today, which is exciting.
Definitely, definitely.
So we'll just roll right into this. So it's been 5 years exactly since you released your first Undercover video exposing Planned Parenthood's illegal sale of fetal body parts. Can you take us back to what those first few days were like as the world's eyes were open to these heinous and illegal acts performed by our nation's largest abortion provider?
Sure. So I remember the original video release 5 years ago, and those first couple of days and couple of weeks very fondly, because it was as horrific as the revelations on the Undercover footage are. And I and my investigative team at CMP and others had been familiar for the 30 months leading up until that with the content of what was going to be on the tapes. But in releasing that information to the world and putting it out there publicly and reporting on it for the first time in about 20 years, about 15 years at that point, it had been about 15 years in 2015 since any major news outlet or even any major advocacy organization had really focused on the harvesting and sale of aborted baby body parts. And I was so encouraged, and it was so edifying to see that overwhelmingly there was such a positive response from the public that people showed that they were horrified, but they really cared, and they cared very deeply about what Planned Parenthood was doing to our brothers and sisters in the womb, what Planned Parenthood was doing to children and to families when they're involved in making money off of abortion and trafficking the body parts of aborted children. And just because it hadn't been reported on in 15 years didn't mean that people had, that people were going to think it was old news or people were going to think it was unimportant. People were incredibly thankful and grateful that somebody was investigating and covering these issues and reporting on them. And people were really, I felt like almost across the board, overwhelmingly wanting to see change, wanting to see something done about the way that our country, our laws, and taxpayer-funded organizations like Planned Parenthood treat our brothers and sisters in the womb, and wanting to see people held accountable for selling baby body parts with taxpayer dollars.
So, how did you originally learn about the abortion industry's practice of harvesting and selling baby body parts of aborted fetuses?
Yeah, so this issue first came across my radar almost 10 years ago to the day. It was in the summer of 2010. I started to kind of do a deep dive into the original, very seminal expose that Mark Crutcher and his group Life Dynamics out in Texas did. They sort of published the first really big expose on the trafficking and harvesting and selling of aborted baby body parts. Now, about 20 years ago, that was largely before the age of the internet, of new media, before the age of Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and all these different things. And so even though they had very good documentation, they had very good evidence, there was some very serious sworn testimony that came out during congressional hearings at that time. And even though almost all of their information, all of the documents came from a Planned Parenthood clinic in Kansas, nevertheless, Planned Parenthood CEO at the time was able to get on national television and sort of wave her hands and say, if anyone were doing this, it would be so awful, and of course they should be prosecuted and held accountable under the law. But Planned Parenthood would never do this. We would never be involved in this. Of course, this is terrible, even though almost all the information was coming from one of Planned Parenthood's own clinics. So at that time, 20 years ago, Planned Parenthood and their allies in the establishment legacy media were able to kind of circle the wagons and sweep everything under the rug. And so it was a big deal for several months at that time, but then it got very quickly swept under the rug, and there was no major media organization, no major advocacy organization that really followed up on the story at that point. And so then 10 years later, in 2010, I started kind of doing a deep dive into the very limited set of information that was there. It was mostly the information that Mark's organization had put out at that time, a few Associated News articles, and also there had been a very good book written about a decade before that by an investigative journalist named Suzanne Reaney called Beyond Abortion, A Chronicle of Fetal Experimentation. And I highly recommend that book to anyone who really wants to do a deep dive into the very dark history of fetal experimentation and the exploitation of aborted children in our country and in our history. This has been a problem for many, many decades. It didn't just arise in the 21st century. It's been going on for quite some time. And then the other really, really sad thing beginning in 2010 is as I was starting to look into and kind of do a deep dive and just starting to research all of these issues, I was also able to confirm, just looking on Google Scholar or doing a literature review of published scientific research, and you find that it's still going on today. At that time, 10 years ago in 2010, and still today in 2020, every couple of weeks or so, or certainly every month or so, you can find another open source, easy to access, prestigious scientific journal, right? An experiment done by intelligent people, very, smart, intelligent people, scientists who understand the natural world, who understand something about humanity and human biology, talking so callously and so coldly in their experimental procedures sections about how many fetal livers or how many fetal eyeballs or how many brains of tiny aborted children they were able to purchase or procure for their experiments. And they'll say, we used 7 livers, or we used 8, we used paired eyeballs from 8 different fetuses, gestational age, 18 to 24 weeks. And these are all individuals who shared our humanity, who were somebody's son or daughter, who could have been somebody's brother or sister. They're not given a name. They're not given an identity. Even very ironically, one of the phrases they use in some of the scientific literature, they say that the samples were de-identified, meaning that the identifying information of the patient, is taken out of it, so there won't be a patient privacy violation, presumably. But you could take that word in another way too, that the samples were de-identified, meaning they were dehumanized. Even though they're so valuable for scientific experimentation, and researchers, taxpayer-funded researchers, the National Institutes of Health will chase after these body parts and hunt after them like buried treasure, only because they're human exactly like you or I. They share that humanity, and it's that same humanity that it's both valued but simultaneously devalued and denied and ignored and erased by their exploitation for scientific experimentation. So it was anyway. So I sort of first came across this issue doing that deep dive into Mark Crutcher's work. It was sort of reinforced by the fact that it was you could find it being done. You could find it being openly discussed in prestigious peer-reviewed journals contemporaneously in 2010 and even still today. And just that real contradiction that's at the heart of it has always kind of stuck in me, and I can never really get over it. That the body parts are only valuable for Planned Parenthood to sell precisely because they're human beings exactly like us. They're only valuable for top-level scientific experimentation because they're human beings exactly like us. And the very people who are the most involved in it, the abortion providers who kill the children and provide the body parts, and the scientists who are brilliant, who are geniuses, who are educated, who know about the truths of the natural world and about the truths about our human nature, these exact people are, they're up there right close, confronted with the humanity of these children who are being killed by abortion and sold for experimentation, and they do it anyway. Even though they know, they do it anyway, and yet they know, and yet they do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how it all kind of came crashing down on me about 10 years ago. I cared about it a lot. I had nightmares for about a week after the first conversation that I had with Mark Crutcher about it, and ever since that summer in 2010, I've just been very convicted that I think that this issue, more than any other, I think that it exposes the inhumanity of abortion as an institution in our country. I think that it is incredibly clarifying for our values of human dignity and human equality in this country and how we treat people. And I think that it deserves to be the tip of the spear when we talk about abortion policy in our country, when we talk about how we treat our brothers and sisters in the womb in this country, and when we talk about the kind of civilization that we want to have, a civilization where everybody's human dignity and human worth is protected, is respected, and even when it's marginalized, even when it's less than perfect or less than planned or less than privileged, it's still important. So I've been very convicted for the past 10 years that this particular issue within the realm of abortion in our country is so important, is the most important thing that I can focus on as a citizen journalist, as someone who cares about these issues. So that's what led me to start the Center for Medical Progress 3 years later in 2013. That's why I think 5 years after the release of the Undercover videos, people are still talking about it. There's still ramifications in the policy world and across the country because of it. And so I'm not going away, and I'm going to continue pressing this issue because I think it's extremely important.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you're touching on this a little bit, but as you're just describing the content of these videos, they really expose some of the most disturbing activities performed by the abortion industry. I remember when you originally released these videos, I was in college, and I just had to put down my computer watching them, just the way that people spoke about these actions, spoke about these little babies, and just seeing some of the results of abortion. It was heartbreaking and frankly just disturbing. As an investigative journalist, how do you emotionally handle directly dealing with people who are doing these activities, who are profiting off of this? And likewise, how has this project impacted your own life, both before you released the videos when you were still undercover and after? I know a lot has happened since you've released them.
Sure. So there's several different questions there. So I'll try to unpack them in order, one at a time. So the first thing to say, as far as how do you handle the investigative journalism work and the undercover work, first big picture thing, and this is something even before I started CMP, even before I was focusing on the Baby Parts Project, back when I used to work with Lila Rose, my friend Lila at Live Action, and part of the whole reason that I even got involved in these issues in the first place is I feel, at least for me, that the industrial scale, state subsidized child killing that is the institution of legalized abortion in our country, that is so horrific, it's so overwhelming, it's so awful. The best way that I have to deal with that is to get involved and to be doing something based on whatever my skill set is and whatever the things are that I'm really good at and that I can contribute. That reality is so horrific and so awful. I feel very strongly that the only way to deal with that is by knowing that you're doing something and you're contributing something to move the ball forward, at least in some way. So that's kind of the first big picture message or big picture answer. More specifically within that, okay, so what are we doing about it? We're going undercover, we're doing investigative journalism, we're talking to the top level abortion providers at Planned Parenthood, we're networking with them, we're having drinks with them at the hotel bar, getting very up close and personal with lots of late-term abortion providers, some of the biggest, nastiest late-term abortion providers in the country. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the things that they say? And it's not easy. It is hard. It is there are definitely moments. I don't always remember them immediately, but going back 5 years later, reviewing some of the undercover footage again, watching some of the video releases again, like we were just doing for the past couple of hours here. There's certain moments that you sort of remember where you're sitting there with the camera and you're having a conversation over a business lunch or a dinner lunch, and the Planned Parenthood medical director sitting across from you, says that they'll flip the baby on ultrasound, change the position of the baby using the ultrasound in order to get it out in one piece or in order to get different body parts. And I remember in those moments, like sort of my body, my arms with the fork and the food or whatever on the plate, sort of freezing or wanting to freeze for a second and just not wanting to eat anymore because of what they're saying. There's definitely moments like that are very arresting, that are very difficult. Ultimately, though, I believe very strongly that the best undercover work is ultimately it's done out of love. It's done out of love for the truth and wanting to expose the truth and communicate the truth in a more powerful way. When it's done in a context like this, where you're exposing how human beings, people that we are connected to, are victimized by it, couples and families in unplanned pregnancy situations, our brothers and sisters in the womb, children who are targeted for abortion to meet the quotas for body parts that are necessary for experimental demand. You're doing it out of love for those people who are victimized by the system and who are victimized by the institution of abortion and fetal trafficking. You're also doing it out of love for the people who are doing monstrous things by participating in abortion and in the harvesting and sale of aborted baby body parts. Like the poet Dante says in the Purgatorio, right, that no one is so lost by his malediction that eternal love cannot return. And so, and even, it's no secret that I'm Catholic, right? There's a blanket of the Blessed Virgin behind my shoulder over there. St. John Chrysostom in his Easter homily, his paschal sermon that a lot of people might be familiar with, he basically describes the entire incarnation and crucifixion and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ as one giant undercover operation. How God takes on a human body, suffers through the death on the cross and everything, goes down into the tomb, goes down into Hades and rises again, as a way to basically to trick the devil, to trick the system, in order to liberate humanity, in order to liberate human souls. And that's done out of love. That's done out of love for humanity. It's done out of love for creation. So ultimately, that's how you have to deal with it. Undercover work is done out of love. Even when you're going into some of the most existential margins of our human experience, like Pope Francis talks about, it's done out of love. And so with that in mind, even when you're talking to a senior level executive at Planned Parenthood National, someone who is responsible for many big late term abortions of healthy children on healthy parents. You can always, human nature is disfigured but not destroyed. There's always something there that you can at least try to connect to, and you can try to hold on to and communicate with that little spark of humanity that's still there, and you can try and bring that up and try and connect to that. And so that I think was in my experience, that's the best way that I had to deal with it. To realize that that at the end of the day, I'm a man and therefore nothing of men is foreign to me. The same thing goes even for the abortion providers. And you can see on some of the undercover tapes too, sometimes it doesn't come through quite as clearly, just because of the pixels and everything else, but in person it was very vivid. Some of them, they start talking about the different body parts of the babies, they start talking about the actual human form of the fetus, and you could start to hear their voice kind of crack a little bit or get a little hoarse, like there's a lump in their throat. Sometimes they'll wipe their eyes once or twice and then they kind of steal up and shake it off, but they know, and some of them are very tortured by it, and I don't think that I think that there's always something there that can be redeemed. There's always something there that that we share as human beings that we can love. It's the same reason that we are pro-life, that we embrace all lives no matter what, and we don't believe that simple imperfections or inconvenience is a reason to exclude someone from the human family. So that was. I think that's probably in my experience, it's the only way you can deal with it, is to recognize that there is a link, no matter how subtle and no matter how buried. There is a correspondence between why we're doing the undercover work on behalf of the victims of abortion, and also why we're doing it to recall to real humanity and real human dignity the people who are involved in the abortion industry.
No, thank you for that. So, being the March for Life, we do have to ask this. Back in 2019, you spoke at the March for Life conference, really one of the most fantastic speakers that we've ever had, I think. And you were just discussing during that time what comes next for the pro-life movement. It had been several years since the release of the videos. And I just wanted to know, how is the March for Life and just seeing the vast just passion and the vast crowds at the March for Life inspired your pro-life work?
Definitely. So the March for Life is the biggest sustained human rights demonstration in the history of the world, I think, certainly in our country's history. That's a fact that commands the respect of church leaders, it commands the respect of the public, commands the respect of presidents and administrations, it commands the respect of history as well. So I've been coming to March for Life, I think, since 2009, I want to say, maybe about 10 to 12 years here. Being able, there's nothing like being able to be a part of a communal demonstration for human rights, for civil rights, for our brothers and sisters in the womb and for their families, that stretches across generations, and has not stopped and will not stop until we have justice for all. That's an incredibly powerful thing for anybody to be part of, and we all need that. We all need to participate in that in some way or another. So that has been a huge, I would call it like a spiritual engine for my work, and I think the work of a lot of other people. So I'm incredibly grateful to the March for Life for that, and I'm excited to keep on joining you guys every year until we have justice for our brothers and sisters in the womb.
We're excited to see you again this year. So on June 30th this year, the Center for Medical Progress released new footage of Planned Parenthood officials under sworn testimony admitting to having harvested the organs of infants born alive during failed abortions. I would say even the most ardent supporters of abortion have to recognize this as an act of infanticide. How is Planned Parenthood still operating after admitting under oath to this criminal act as well as other criminal acts that you've exposed?
That's an excellent question. I don't think I'm the one who necessarily should be asked that question. I think that's a question we should all be asking of Attorney General Bill Barr, of the White House, of the Department of Justice. I know that the Senate Judiciary Committee about a year ago was asking that exact question, and has a year later still apparently received no response that has been publicly announced. It's very confusing, and it's almost unbelievable that during this administration, the past couple of years here, the Department of Justice has vigorously prosecuted the trafficking and sale of eagle body parts, right? There was a case in, I think it was South Dakota, where they had a whole undercover sting operation that they did, and the U.S. attorney described it as a chop shop for eagle body parts, and it was so horrific, and they prosecuted these people for selling eagle body parts. You know how much money they made off of eagle body parts? Approximately $6,000 total. But they prosecuted them. The feds prosecuted them very vigorously for selling eagle body parts, about $300 a piece, $6,000 total, and they were prosecuted, and that was a good thing. And yet, here we are, 5 years after the release of the Undercover videos, 4 years after the criminal referrals sent by two different congressional investigations, one in the Senate, one at the House Select Panel, about 2.5 years after the Da Vinci companies, Planned Parenthood's longtime business partners in Southern California, here in Orange County where I'm located, the Da Vinci companies pled guilty. They admitted guilt in a $7.8 million settlement with the District Attorney of Orange County. They admitted at the end of 2017 that they illegally sold baby body parts from the local Planned Parenthood at Planned Parenthood of Orange and San Bernardino counties, which, by the way, is the biggest recipient, apparently, that's been reported as the biggest recipient of taxpayer funding under the coronavirus stimulus loan program. They got a $7.5 million loan fraudulently, Planned Parenthood of Orange and San Bernardino counties, because they hid the fact on their forms that they're an affiliation of a much larger organization with substantial resources. Yet Planned Parenthood Orange County, biggest fraudulent recipient of coronavirus stimulus funds, $7.5 million, partnered for almost 8 years with the Da Vinci companies. The Da Vinci companies admitted guilt in a $7.8 million settlement for selling baby body parts from that Planned Parenthood against the law. We have the CEO of that Planned Parenthood, John Dunn, sworn in under oath, a videotaped deposition, admitting that infants have been born alive at his clinic and the staff doesn't call 911. And so we have all of that, and the other companies involved, like STEM Express and Advanced Bioscience Resources, that continues to sell body parts to taxpayer-funded researchers, and Planned Parenthood that has been involved across the board for years and all these different things, the Planned Parenthood Research Department especially. There's been, no one else has been held to account. The Da Vinci companies have admitted all of this, and we have other admissions under oath from top-level Planned Parenthood officials. It's very confusing. I think surely the trafficking of eagle body parts is not considered to be a more grievous crime under this administration or by the Department of Justice than the trafficking of aborted baby body parts is. So it's very important. We have a new petition up on CMP's website as of today. If you go to centerformedicalprogress.org, you'll see a little pop-up to sign our petition to Attorney General Bill Barr and to the Department of Justice that now is the time that we want to see justice for anyone who is involved in the harvesting and sale of aborted baby body parts. There should be charges filed now against everyone and anyone who is involved in the trafficking and sale of body parts from aborted children. Also a petition to the White House that now is the time to disbar Planned Parenthood from all remaining sources of federal funding. As we've seen with the COVID stimulus loan program, they're completely, you can't give them even an inch, or they'll take $80 million fraudulently, which is what they did under the COVID loan program. So you can find that petition at cmp.org or centerformedicalprogress.org.
And we have that link right in the comments for anyone watching, where they can click directly to the petition, and really encourage everyone to go sign that petition. It is desperately needed. So after 5 years of the world having undeniable proof that these horrific and illegal acts occur at Planned Parenthood facilities, it's understandable that pro-lifers can feel discouraged that nothing seems to be able to bring down Planned Parenthood. How do you stay optimistic towards the work, towards your work, and how do you, or what message of encouragement could you give to the pro-life movement to stay optimistic and continue fighting the good fight?
Sure. I think that there are a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I mean, I can tell you as someone who's been in the trenches with Planned Parenthood now, right? Like not just in the undercover investigation, but I've sat across from their top level leaders in 7 and 8 hour depositions for many, many days. That's how we got a lot of the footage that we're releasing right now that you just referenced. I can tell you that Planned Parenthood is very afraid of this issue in particular. I mean, just consider the fact that, they could have, it's been 5 years now. It's been 5 years and we're still talking about this. We're still resharing, republishing the videos. There's new footage now that CMP has that we're in the process of releasing this summer. And then hopefully there's going to be more footage to come. Half of our original undercover footage from the National Abortion Federation trade shows, which is the major trade group of abortion providers that's basically half controlled by Planned Parenthood anyway. That remains unreleased. They've sort of it was Planned Parenthood and their allies in the abortion industry's decision to file a bunch of retaliatory cases against me, to sort of split off that body of footage and keep it in like a time capsule for years and years until later, where it may be released later, to submit to these sworn under oath depositions where they make these awful admissions of selling baby body parts for valuable consideration against the law, of changing their abortion procedures, of using partial birth abortions, describing cases of infanticide in their clinics and cases where infants with beating hearts have been harvested for body parts. It was their decision to go through with this for 5 years and to make it happen this way. And so, so it both shows how seriously Planned Parenthood has taken the revelations of CMP's undercover work, how seriously threatened their taxpayer funding and their position as a allegedly law-abiding organization, not really, is by these facts and by this information. And it shows, and it also shows their great overreach and their great myopicness, that they would think that they can just continue to try and persecute people who are just telling the truth about what they're doing, and not have that lead to further exposure for them and for their organization. It is the case that the Trump administration has taken some very good early first steps here with terminating, basically following the law as written and making sure that taxpayer money does not go to subsidize abortion programs at Planned Parenthood through the Title X program, prohibiting fetal experimentation at government laboratories and instituting much stricter new protections for any further taxpayer-funded fetal experimentation that would be contemplated or applied for by anyone. So these are things that would not have happened without the undercover videos and without the information that's contained on them being published to the world. And so I think that we can be encouraged by the fact that that's out there. And I do think that the undercover videos themselves are, I think that, I've always believed that the videos themselves are kind of their own victory. The fact that the information that's on them, the statements and the admissions of Planned Parenthood senior level leadership, that's been exposed and published and recorded for all of the world and all of history to see. They're never going to be able to get away from that, and they're especially never going to be able to get away from what they've now admitted about those tapes and about the statements on them and the facts contained therein under oath in sworn court proceedings. So I would be encouraged that at the end of the day, content is king. At the end of the day, facts and justice will win out over lies, corruption, and abuse from Planned Parenthood. So I think that there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I would much rather be us than be them right now. So that's how I would answer that question.
So you were just listing off a lot of great successes that you've had as a result of these videos. What do you personally think is the greatest success, though, of releasing these undercover videos?
I do think that the biggest success is the videos themselves. Like I said, I think the fact that that information has been captured, has been published, and is an indelible record for all of the world and all of history to see what Planned Parenthood has been doing to our brothers and sisters in the womb. I think that that's that was always the biggest goal, and that's a goal that we accomplished 5 years ago, and I remain very proud of that. I'm also, I also think it's a huge victory that we had 2 major nationwide comprehensive congressional investigations prompted by the release of those videos. Those investigations not only confirmed the major allegations against Planned Parenthood that were captured on the videotapes, but they also went deeper, and they showed much as they described it, the investigations described it as systemic wrongdoing and systemic violations at Planned Parenthood, even bigger and deeper than what CMP's undercover videos had originally captured. They led to dozens of criminal and regulatory referrals against Planned Parenthood and their business partners, which the Department of Justice confirmed in 2017 they were following up on. As we've talked about, we're still waiting to get the follow-up on those, and really now is the time for law enforcement on all levels and officials on all levels to follow through on the information and the evidence that's contained there. For the very first time in history, a node of Planned Parenthood's baby body parts trafficking network, the Da Vinci companies in Orange County, admitted guilt for selling body parts illegally from Planned Parenthood. And by the way, Planned Parenthood knew about that. They admit on the undercover tapes that they knew what Da Vinci was doing. So they're just as guilty as accessories, and they should be held accountable under the law for that.
And you were touching upon this earlier, but in May, the Center for Medical Progress announced that it was suing Planned Parenthood, Kamala Harris, and the California Attorney General for conspiracy to violate the First and 14th Amendment civil rights of yourself and CMP. Can you share with us anything about this legal battle, how it began, its current status, and how any of us watching today can support you and your legal team?
Sure. So as you can imagine, as I think everybody who's watching can probably imagine and may already be aware of, Planned Parenthood and their allies were not happy that the information on the undercover videos has been published. They were furious, actually. They know that it could destroy them as an organization because of the activities that it points to them being involved in. And so Planned Parenthood has been working overtime for the past 5 years to try and suppress the videos, suppress the information, and attack and suppress my and Center for Medical Progress's First Amendment civil rights, just to publish the facts about what we found as reporters. And so Planned Parenthood and their allies enlisted the help of Kamala Harris, who at the time was the Attorney General of the state of California, is now a U.S. Senator from California, may soon be a vice presidential candidate from California. And they enlisted the help of Kamala Harris, who they have had a significant patronage relationship with for many, many years, to for the first time in the history of the state of California, for the first time in the history of California's video recording law, to use that law criminally to come after a journalist, come after a reporter. There are local television news journalists in Los Angeles and San Francisco, everywhere in California, who on a daily and weekly basis are doing undercover video reporting, recording it in the state of California, publishing it in the state of California. In some cases, even doing reporting in some instances where you really kind of think, that seems like it might actually be a private conversation that is confidential under the law, inside of somebody's private residence, inside somebody's home, inside a doctor's office. We were very careful. CMP was very careful during our undercover work to make sure that in the state of California, we only recorded in places of public accommodation like hotel lobbies, hotel mezzanines, restaurants, crowded public restaurants at the lunch hour, at the dinner hour, places that, that undercover news journalists in California record and publish in on a daily and weekly basis. they have never, the Attorney General of California has never come after news reporters for undercover reporting in California. Even in some of these more situations where you kind of wonder, it seems a little iffy, like in somebody's private home, which we never recorded in. So for the first time in the 60-year history of that law, Planned Parenthood got Kamala Harris to take that law, use it to come and raid my home. We have in the investigator notes from the Attorney General's office, we have them recording that Planned Parenthood specifically told them they wanted the videos and they wanted my computers that I was using to produce the videos and publish them. They wanted those seized. They wanted the means of production, the means of publication seized. They didn't say that they wanted, a statewide, review of undercover recording practices of all these nosy news journalists all over the place. No, they said they wanted Daleiden's computers seized so he can't publish videos about us anymore. And the Attorney General of California admitted in open court in a filing just in the past 2 years here that the reason that they targeted me alone among all other undercover news reporters in the state of California, the reason they targeted me was because of what they said was the shocking way that I edited the videos. Now, obviously, we dispute the characterization. The statements on the tapes are shocking enough. I don't think that we edited them to increase the shock value. But even as it is your First Amendment civil right to enhance the impact of your own speech and your own publications. And so the Attorney General of California has admitted that the entire case that they launched at the behest of Planned Parenthood was solely for the purpose of criminally punishing the content of what I was publishing. That is a blatant attack on the First Amendment. It should send chills down the spine of every news reporter in America, anyone who cares about a free and open democratic public discourse in our country. So we filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Kamala Harris, the current Attorney General of California, Javier Becerra, Planned Parenthood, the National Abortion Federation, and others for conspiracy to violate First Amendment civil rights, and that is moving forward in Los Angeles federal court this summer.
And if any of our viewers would like to support you, are they able to do that?
Definitely. If you go to centerformedicalprogress.org, you can find the latest information about that case. You can support us there. There's several different pro bono and semi bono or low bono law firms involved in the case. So the best way, if you want to support us, you can go to centerformedicalprogress.org, and your gifts at cmp.org, not only completely tax deductible, but also they will also support our ongoing video releases and ongoing publications this summer. So I'm extremely grateful for the support and the goodwill that the public has shown us for the past 5 years. It hasn't stopped. And that's how I've been able to not stop and keep on doing this and keep on pressing that issue. So thank you, everybody, for your continuing attention and concern and engagement on these issues.
Fantastic. And lastly, how can our viewers today learn more about your investigative work, any new work that's coming out, and most importantly, how can they best share the findings that you present?
Definitely. All of the undercover videos that we've released are available on our website at centerformedicalprogress.org or cmp.org. You can find the direct links on there to the YouTube versions. You can continue to like and share and reshare the YouTube videos, the original links. They're also now natively on our Facebook page. You can find Center for Medical Progress on Facebook as well. Plus, at cmp.org, you will find the new series that we've been releasing of the unsealed excerpts of the sworn videotaped depositions of top-level Planned Parenthood officials and fetal trafficking officials. We've released 2 videos in that series so far. There will be more to come in the future this summer. And you'll also find at centerformedicalprogress.org or cmp.org the new petition that you can sign to call on the Department of Justice, recognizing that Planned Parenthood's business partners have already admitted guilt for selling baby body parts from Planned Parenthood. Now is the time for Attorney General Bill Barr to act, for the DOJ to act, and bring to justice anyone and everyone, all of the entities that have been involved in harvesting and selling aborted baby body parts. Also calling on the White House to immediately disbar Planned Parenthood from all remaining federal sources of taxpayer subsidies. And there's a list of action items on there as well at centerformedicalprogress.org, where you can take action to sign the petition, call the DOJ, call the White House and tell them that there needs to be justice for our brothers and sisters in the womb, and for pregnant women who are treated like cash crops at Planned Parenthood and other abortion clinics in our country when they're targeted to meet experimental demand through this system that says that our children are worth more dead than alive when they're traded for body parts with taxpayer funding. It has to stop. Now is the time. It's gone on for way too long. So you can find those action items at centerformedicalprogress.org. Looking forward to seeing the day with everybody when there's no longer a price tag put on human life.
Thank you, David, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. We encourage all of you to go follow the Center for Medical Progress and David Daleiden on social media. And you can also, as he mentioned, take action today by visiting centerformedicalprogress.org. The link is in the comments of this video, and when we post on YouTube, it will be in the description there as well. But we encourage you all to go sign the petition and demand justice against anyone involved in trafficking baby body parts. Thank you again, David, for joining us, and we really look forward to seeing whatever comes next from you and the Center for Medical Progress.
Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you. Thank you, everybody, for signing on.